Hi everyone, this is Dennis Stevens. This is another video in my series on the use of AI in software development. In this video, I'm going to show you exactly what prompt I used to create part of a personal project I'm working on. It has both a user interface side and a database side. So I thought it'd be interesting to see exactly what AI generated for it. So I'm going to show you what it generated, and then I refined my prompts over time, and you'll see what that produced by the AI. Okay, let's get to it. First, let's look at the actual prompt. Now, the prompt is for a project which I've described in earlier videos, but to make it very quick, it is an app to be used by independent makers, artisans, etc., that sell on places like Etsy, Shopify, and so forth. And the idea is it will be both an order management and a cost tracking application. And I wanted to, in this prompt, just create a pretty basic kind of login and then be able to find orders. Another point to note here is that it will be a multi-tenant application, meaning that multiple customers of the app using the application will all have their data in the same database. So to identify who is supposed to be looking at what data, I'm using what I'm calling company ID, and every table in the database will have a company ID column. So the important thing is when somebody logs in, they must get a company ID variable back, and then that will be used as a parameter in all subsequent database calls. So if you haven't been reading the prompt while I've been talking, I'll read it now really quickly. So it's here in this kind of orange box. It is: write an app using Python Flask framework to have the following: a login page that asks for a username and password. The login page will call a post-GRE function called company.getCompanyID Company.getCompanyID will return an integer called company ID. The app must save the value of company ID to be used in other pages. When the app receives the company ID, the app goes to a page called Order Find Page. This page will have a text box labeled Order ID. Next to the text box is a button labeled Find Order. Clicking Find Order will call a post-GRE SQL function called orders.getOrdersByCompany. This function takes the company ID as the first parameter. Order ID from the text box order ID is the second parameter. The function will return a data set which will be displayed on the page. I did this kind of quickly. I'm now just thinking the function should probably be called getOrdersByOrderID because everything will have company ID, but I think that's okay for right now. So here's what, again, I'm using Copilot, which I'm sure is not the most optimized AI for this purpose, although I was just reading how the cost of using the more sophisticated, technically minded AI is pretty expensive because you have to buy tokens to use it, whereas Copilot is included with Microsoft Office. So I can use it pretty much as I want. So here's what Copilot tells me. Here's a clean, production-ready Flask app that does exactly what you described. The phrase production-ready is already a red flag. Anyway, login page calls company get ID, username, password, stores the company ID, goes order find page, ... Everything is structured so you can drop it into your existing project and extend it. And first, this is kind of nice. It gives the full Flask app Python the really kind of the structure of what it should be. My app.py, templates, login HTML, order find page HTML. So this is kind of the folder structure that the application will have. Okay, now we look at app.py, which is kind of the heart of it. So we import Flask, import scopg to connect to the database, secret key needed for sessions, dbconfig host, localhost, db name, db user, db password. It creates, here's a get db connection using the psychopg, can I call it that? Login page, get post, if request method is post, it gets the username, password. I believe strip gets rid of, I think it gets rid of empty characters. If it's not supplied, it will send a message and tries to make a connection. Call function, select company, ... result. If it doesn't get something back, it knows to flash a message. Otherwise, it gets the company ID, the session, company ID equals company ID, and it redirects to the order find page. It has an exception that will show the database error. Then we go to the order find page if we log in correctly. We do some checks here. Post. We get the connection again. We select star from orders by ... This is because that's why it's doing it as a function. It's calling a function, so that's why it's doing select star from instead of like executing a stored procedure. Again, it does some exceptions, templates, the login, ... templates, order, find page, HTML. What this app gives you, full login, ... It's basically telling me, okay, this is what you asked for, this is what I'm giving you. And then it says it almost always does this. If you want, I can generate the SQL for the post-query SQL functions. A version using stored procedures that are functions. Bootstrap style UI. Version using async fast API. So I said, create it using stored procedures. Absolutely, says Copilot. Copilot, by the way, is annoyingly cheerful. I think it should have a sarcasm function or maybe a slider called attitude, where instead of saying, like it could say like, hey, you didn't ask for it. You should have asked for a stored procedure if that's what you wanted. I don't think that would just, make things different. And it says, okay, here's how it's going to do that. I actually created this is a stored procedure already, but basically like this. Call it stored procedure version. It's pretty much all this, obviously it's all pretty much the same, except it's calling it proc. That's cool. And it gives a little more information of the differences of how to use it. Stored procedure. Then it gives me some stored procedure SQL templates, saying, okay, here's what it should look like if I want to match what is written for the Python code, order lookup, ... Okay, so that's basically it. Now, while I'm here and you're watching, let's try some things. Because for one thing, we've got the dbconfig username and passwords like right there in app.py. And again, it always ends this with, want me to create a Bootstrap UI, convert this to Fast API to create a blah, 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 blah. But, that's not what I really want you it to do, here's what I'm going to tell Copilot to do is can you move the login information to a separate file? Absolutely, and this is a smart move. But I don't need you to tell me it's a smart move, dude. I know it's a smart move. Pulling your advanced credentials in a separate file keeps your app cleaner, more secure, and easier to maintain. Of course, you didn't do that, Copilot. And it says, not hard, create dbconfig.py, just put that in a separate file, update the Flask app to import that file, ... That's great. Why the structure works well. Your application file stays promoting in logic. You can create config dev, config prod. So you kind of see what it's doing. It generates code, which, and anyone out there who's more of a Python veteran or PostgreSQL SQL veteran, which I'm not really. I have used Python a bit for kind of just, data analysis stuff, and less so for creating applications. So, someone watching this might know more. But it did give me what I asked in the most bare bones, direct way possible. And you can see up here, ready for environment variables. If you want to go more secure, which I think I do, create env file plus python.env, Windows credential. There's various ways to do that. And another thing I want to do is login stored procedure. Can you add what do I want first? Also, each should be table again. You've got it. Adding error trapping and audit logging inside your PostgreSQL SQL procedure is exactly the right move for a production-grade authentication flow. Blow is a clean, robust version of your login sort procedure that return company ID, if any, which I didn't even mention that, flag it as success or failed, or return company ID. So it creates, this is okay. Login audit. A primary key, username, the username, the login time, the company ID, succeeded or not, error log, ... and exception in the sort procedure. And at the end, of course, gives you more things. No matter what happens, the procedure returns the company ID or null, log is the attempt. Flask code does not need to change. Gives me more things it can do for me or will try. Version, blocks accounts after X failed attempts, hashes passwords, reusable logging, sort procedure, logging schema, ... which are all kind of cool. It's interesting, of course, you'll note that way back here, the very first version it gave me, clean production-ready Flask app. As a lot of people watching this, if you know how what we call AI is working, is it's not really, we call artificial intelligence like it's intelligent. It's not. It's a very sophisticated program in the way that it has looked at tons of text and human communication, and it's kind of calculating the most likely correct response to whatever you say to it. So I guess, here's a clean production-ready Flask app. And of course, with its hard-coded stored procedures, its lack of error trapping, lack of logging, but I still thought it was totally production ready. And when I go up here, it's like, absolutely, is this smart? We're putting your database. Here's a clean production ready way. I thought the first version was production ready. It was not. Anyway, this, I don't want, that's basically it for this video. I just thought it'd be interesting to see what it's actually like when you try to use these prompts for software development. And again, I mean, I am just one guy working on his own in his own home. I don't, I'm very curious if anyone has used other AI programs that I assume are more sophisticated and more tuned into making software development. Like, would it do what Copilot did on the first try? Would it have just hard-coded passwords in the file? Would it not have error trapping in the stored procedures? If you tell, make me a stored procedure that brings me all the orders by order ID, it just does that. And, does it write particularly good SQL? Probably not. Does it know to add error trapping? I suppose it would if you told it. The reason I said create an error logging table is this is the way that I like to do it, because I'm a error trapping, save errors to error log table. And that's kind of that's my approach, because I'm fundamentally a database guy. I like to query tables in databases. I suppose errors could have been put in if it's a stored procedures, and of course, for errors in a stored procedure, of course, you're going to put you're going to trap the errors on the database. In fact, while I'm here, let me put in Py files. To a file, because maybe there are errors that happen that aren't going to create a row in the error table. Is a smart. Adding Python side error logging is a smart complement to the database side logging you've already built. It gives you a full picture of failures. So it's a clean, production ready. I wonder if I could tell it to never use the word production ready again. Anyway, so although I'm kind of making fun of it, for, that I have to keep telling it to add in things. But, as someone, as I've mentioned previously, I'm basically a database person. I don't do a lot of app development, even with Python. And just, this is going to save me a lot of time. All the, especially with the Python files it's created. And I did this in another project from Copilot. I really could copy and paste stuff. I could click copy up here and put it in a Python file. And it took more tweaking, but it basically worked. So it's definitely, as just a solo person, working alone, it definitely saved me a huge amount of time. No doubt about that. It would take me much longer to just write all this on my own, as well as the database work that I basically am doing by myself. Although sometimes for that I use Copilot as well. And another thing, speaking about this weirdly chipper way it talks all the time, like, it's a smart compliment. Is I'm the first person to give my coworkers and colleagues the benefit of a doubt that everyone has bad days. Everyone, I don't know what happened to you before you came to work today. Maybe you got bad news the day before. Maybe you're just not the most diplomatic individual. But if you know your, but if you know your stuff, if you know your field, and you will at least kind of meet me halfway and be useful and productive and work with me, then I'm not someone who complains to HR about somebody talked, somebody said something mean to me. I don't do that. You have to be pretty. It has to be pretty egregious to get me to run complaining about behavior. Not that I've never done that, but it takes a lot. And the fact is, you can see, I could just ask. I started it with this pretty relatively basic concept, just a login page and then a page to display orders, and then I just refine it and refine it and refine it. I look at what it gave me and I see I ask it to add what I believe I need, and it does it in a couple seconds. That's why I filmed it myself doing it. And, I guess, considering how many grumpy fellow developers I work with over the years, I will be okay with a reasonably, Copilot has proved to be a reasonably competent sort of aid. And it's never grumpy. It also, you'll see, it gives me an answer in a few seconds. It's not always quite the correct answer. I have to keep prompting it. A real Python expert probably would have said, "Oh, hey, here's how you should deal with your logins. Here's how you should trap errors, etc., etc." But it saved me a long way. If you took all this stuff in the very first iteration and just put it in production, because Copilot says it's production ready. If you set it up just the way it's Copilot intends it, I believe this would work. I'm not going to put this into not into production, even my dev environment. But I find, basically it's code. The code it gives me works. It's just not the best code. You still have to know what you're doing. Okay, I hope that was interesting to people. And of course, feel free to subscribe to this channel if you want. I also post links on LinkedIn. You can follow me on LinkedIn as well. I'll put that. And I also put this on 2 channels. I have 2 YouTube channels. One just for Dennis Stevens, which is where the technical database stuff typically goes. But this project is also for a 3D printing business that I've had on the side for a while. I have my own Etsy shop. That's where I got this idea. I have my own Etsy shop, and I have a channel called 3D Mini Magic. That's the name of the shop, and I have a YouTube channel with the same name. I post stuff there related to 3D printing and my and the shop. I don't know. Who knows? Maybe whoever you are, whoever you got this video, you're interested in that as well. I'll put links to all the stuff in the description, and I'll probably also post this on the 2 channels with links to my LinkedIn, to my Etsy shop, and all sorts of things. Click on them all. Click on them. I promise they don't give you any viruses. I'm pretty sure. Okay, good enough. See you later.